Today we're going to discuss the self-determination theory. The foundation of this theory is individuals' motivation. It states that people are essentially concerned with motivation, how to move themselves or others to act. Individuals struggle to find energy, mobilize effort, and persist at tasks of life and work. And people are often motivated by external factors such as reward systems, grades, evaluations, or opinions of others. Think about how motivation plays a role in your life. Yet, just as often as we have people that are motivated from extrinsic values, some people are motivated from within, by interests, curiosity, or abiding values. These motivations may not be supported by extrinsic rewards, but are nevertheless sustained. The interplay between the extrinsic forces acting on a person and the intrinsic motives and the needs inherent in human nature is the basis of the self-determination theory. The self-determination theory, often abbreviated SDT, focuses on how social and cultural factors facilitate or undermine people's senses of volition and initiative, in addition to their well-being and the quality of their performance. So we need to think about how, our social and cultural factors help our motivation or hurt our motivation. Conditions supporting the individual's experience of autonomy, competence, and relatedness are argued to foster the most volitional and high-quality forms of motivation and engagement for activities, including enhanced performance, persistence, and creativity. After we define these factors, it'll make more sense how they relate to determination or motivation. The degree to which any of these three psychological needs is unsupported or thwarted within a social context will have a robust detrimental impact on wellness in that setting. So if you have autonomy, competence, or relatedness, or low values in these outcomes, your behavior will be thwarted, meaning it'll be more difficult or it may cease. The dynamics of psychological need support and need thwarting have been studied within families, classrooms, teams, organizations, clinics, and cultures. You can study groups of people in all different settings. And as we know from basic life skills, all these needs need to be met in order to become self-determined. We can't motivate ourselves intrinsically if we don't have our basic needs met. And you can see in the picture, we have a picture of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is a very basic psychological construct saying that we need our physiological needs to be met before we can progress to working on our safety needs, love and belonging, esteem, and the last step, which is self-actualization. So some basic physiological needs mean air, water, food, and shelter. And then when we get to the top of the pyramid, then we can become the person that we really want to be, once we have all of our needs met. So this is the theory of motivation. You can see that there are three constructs pointing to motivation. You have to have all three of these in order to be intrinsically motivated, okay? So the first one is autonomy. This is the feeling that one has a choice and is willing to endorse one's behavior, right? When you have autonomy, you get to choose what you do, okay? The next construct is competence, which is the experience of mastery and being effective in one's activity, right? This can be perceived or real, just like we talked about risk previously. If you perceive yourself to be competent in a task, then you think you are good at it. The final construct is relatedness, the need to feel connected and belongingness with others. So you need to feel like you are a part of the team or at least have some close support systems. And then again, once you have all three of these, you should then be sufficiently motivated. So let's break these down a little further just to ensure clarity. So under competence, right, people need to gain mastery of tasks and learn different skills. When people feel that they have the skills needed for success, they are more likely to take actions that will help them achieve their goals. Let's think about motivation in a work setting, okay, a workplace setting. Have you ever completed a task at work where you feel like you didn't know exactly what to do? Right? That can really hinder motivation and encourage a high turnover rate for employees. Relatedness. People need to experience a sense of belonging and attachment to other people, and this can be in any type of social setting. It can be family, friends, your coworkers, or your peers. If you don't feel like you belong or you feel like an outsider, you're going to be less motivated. The final construct, autonomy. People need to feel in control of their own behaviors and goals. This sense of being able to take direct action that will result in real change plays a major part in helping people feel self-determined. If you do not feel like you have control or you have any choice over your actions, then you're probably going to be less likely to initiate a behavior change. So let's go through an example. Imagine a person who fails to complete an important project at work. If this person is high in self-determination, they will admit their fault, believe that they can do something to fix the problem, and take action to correct the mistake. So this person is high in self-motivation, self-determination. They admit what went wrong and they work towards fixing it. And you can imagine that this is similar to someone that has high self-efficacy. So let's imagine the person has very low self-determination. Now they might instead look for other things that they can blame, maybe other people. They might make excuses, assign blame, or refuse to admit their own role in the problem. Most importantly, perhaps, is that this person won't feel motivated to fix the mistake. Instead, they might feel helpless to control the situation and believe that nothing they do will have any real effect. This is an important distinction. So how does it work? Psychological growth, as described by this self-determination theory, does not happen automatically. It requires continual work. Researchers have suggested that the tendency to be proactive or passive towards growth is largely influenced by the social conditions in which we are raised. Social support is key here. Social support and interaction can either foster or thwart well-being and personal growth. Think about how social support systems have helped you through your life. Have you had any close friends or any inspiring teachers or role models in your life? So in real-world application, extrinsic motivators can lower self-determination. So this might seem counterintuitive. Okay? Giving people extrinsic rewards, meaning tangible, right? One of the main examples of this would be money, right? I'm giving you a physical reward for doing a behavior, okay? Or a gift or allowance would be another example. So giving people extrinsic rewards for an already intrinsically motivated behavior can undermine autonomy, okay? So if you are already doing a behavior and I want you to continue doing it, okay? So let's say, for example, in a classroom, if you have good attendance, you come to class every day and on time, and then I start rewarding attendance, it could be something silly like candy or less homework, then it's going to take away some of your autonomy. You're going to feel like you have to come. You have to come to get these extrinsic rewards. So again, it can undermine autonomy. Extrinsic rewards are not useful long term. Try to think of your own example about how giving an extrinsic reward can undermine one's autonomy. On the other hand, however, positive feedback can increase self-determination. Unexpected positive encouragement can increase intrinsic motivation by helping people feel more competent. And just to clarify, extrinsic meaning external, intrinsic meaning internal. Okay? I am just naturally motivated by my values, my interests, etc. I don't need external motivators to help me. So again, unexpected positive encouragement can increase intrinsic motivation by helping people feel more competent. Try to think of an example of yourself. Have you ever unexpectedly gotten positive feedback from somebody, perhaps a teacher or a boss? How does that make you feel? Motivation isn't always purely intrinsic or extrinsic, but often occurs on a continuum of self-determined and non-self-determined behaviors. So now we're going to look at the actual theory. And just for clarification, we'll discuss this, or this will be discussed in most of the images. Perceived locus of control, often abbreviated PLOC. This is where one places the power of behavior change. We've talked about this briefly, where you have to feel that you can change a behavior in order to successfully change it. So if my perceived locus of control is my parents, then I will not feel like I can change my behavior. It has to be on you. You have to perceive that you are in control of your behavior. So now let's look at some of these theories. So this is the self-determination theory, and again, it is on a scale. Okay, it is a scale of motivation, meaning you move up and down the scale depending on the behavior. Okay, so on the left we see behavior, motivation, regulatory styles, and perceived locus of control. And all of these change when you move towards the right. So under behavior, or next to behavior rather, we have non-self-determined, meaning these people are not motivated intrinsically. Okay, and then on the opposite side of the scale, you have self-determined. They are intrinsically motivated. Okay, so then you look at motivation. When you're non-self-determined, you have no motivation or amotivation. And then you move towards extrinsic motivation, and then you finish with intrinsic motivation. And then regulatory styles is the next important part of this image. You can pretty much ignore the PLOC unless you want to understand this theory further. So regulatory styles, when you are amotivated, are non-regulation, and then you move to external regulation, introjected regulation, identified regulation, integrated regulation, and then finally intrinsic regulation. And this will be broken down further in the next slides. So here's another example of the theory, and I think this might be a little more useful because it's broken up by colors and is a little less harsh on the eyes. Okay, so again, if you start from the left of the image, we have controlled motivation, meaning the motivation is lower and you're more controlled by external factors. And then on the right side, we have higher motivational quality. Okay? So let's go down to external regulation and look at the bullet points underneath this. Okay? So this is what breaks down what each stage means. Okay? So when you are writing this theory out, you would start with amotivation, external, introjected, identification, integration, and end with intrinsic. But you will need to be able to describe each of these stages. Tell me what they look like. So pretty obviously, amotivation would include a lack of perceived competence. You don't think you can do it, or perhaps you lack value of it. It's not important to you. And then with external regulation, you would have external rewards or punishments. You would just comply with instructions. Okay. So if someone told you to do it, you might do it, especially if you got a reward for it, or if you didn't do it, you would be punished. Okay. So one example that comes to mind when I think about this is following like a drill sergeant's orders, right? You just say yes, you do it, or you'll get in trouble. The next one is introjection, okay? So your ego starts to become involved, right? How you see yourself, and you're focusing on approval from self and others. So you are becoming intrinsically motivated just a tiny bit. You're focusing on yourself and what others will think of you if you don't do the behavior. Okay, so when we think about weight change or weight loss, okay, you might be focusing on, I need to lose weight because I want to be skinny like the people on TV, okay, or I want to be skinny like my friends. that's not exactly a healthy motivator, right? The healthiest would be I want to feel better for myself, I want to be a healthy body weight, I want to prevent chronic disease. Okay, but again, this is focusing on appearance and what others might think of you. The next stage, identification, it starts to become of personal importance, right? You're starting to value it. You're consciously valuing the activity and you're self-endorsing your goals. Okay, you are setting goals and you think they are good goals that you want to continue to seek after. And then finally we have integration. So you have congruence of values and action. Okay, I value being a healthy weight, so I'm working towards becoming a healthy weight. And then finally we have intrinsic motivation. When you get to this stage, you do the behavior purely because if it's of interest, you enjoy it, and you have some inherent satisfaction. It's pleasing to you, not for any external reasons. Here's another figure of the theory, and this one also includes the three constructs of motivation. So again, before we can even understand the self-determination theory, we have to understand motivation. And motivation is influenced by relatedness, competence, and autonomy. If you don't have these three factors, then you cannot become intrinsically motivated. So please make sure that you are familiar with all of these terms and the constructs. So how to rule the world based on motivation. First, you have to believe that you have control over your own life. Your behaviors will have an influence on outcomes. So if you don't think you have control, you will never successfully change a behavior. Okay? You also have to be knowledgeable and understand how your behavior change will affect you in the long run. Okay? You don't want to think short term, you want to think medium to long term. You need to have higher self-motivation. Don't rely on external rewards or punishments for motivation. This can be hard as you are a young adult and you're entering adulthood. I don't know why that was hard to say. Adulthood, because there's not a lot of rewards for doing everyday basic tasks. No one congratulates you when you go grocery shopping or manage to pay rent next month. Okay? So you need to focus on becoming intrinsically motivated for yourself. You need to base your actions on your own goals and behaviors, and do what brings you closer to your goals. If you want to lose weight, you need to avoid temptation. If you want to exercise, you need to avoid not exercising. Try to live a physically active lifestyle. And then finally, you need to take responsibility for your behaviors. Take credit for your successes, but also accept blame for your failures. Without these factors, it will be really hard to foster intrinsic motivation.